Aloha! Welcome to another episode of Love What with Audrey Weilai, where I ask my friends and mentors about how they define non-romantic love. Today, my dear friend Jen is joining me.
Aloha, Audrey. It's so amazing to be here with you in this context of exploring love. Thanks for inviting.
Could you tell us a little bit about yourself? I mean, you have so many amazing experiences.
I operate in a lot of dimensions. And by that, like when you hear the word dimensions, people sometimes think of, like space or spiritual, but I'm talking about like in the physical world as well. The old phrase is I wear a lot of hats.
Yes.
So I would describe myself like underneath that as someone that's really fluid, like water to like move around in an amount of a lot of different areas of life. And it's something I really enjoy.
So you're going with the flow of life.
Yeah, I'm doing my best. I wasn't always able to describe it that way. So when I was just doing that unconsciously, I was like, oh my goodness, what am I doing in my life? One of the ways I met you was through literally the water, like being in the water, aquatic body worker, and dancer.
Yes. Well, could you tell people more? Because to me, you're a prolific writer. You've published really amazing books, and you're a teacher. You use myth and stories as medicine, and you're a massage therapist. You practice aquatic massage as well, and then you know a lot about farm medicine.
Yeah, you just did it for me. But yeah, no, writing and language has always been my primary form of expression and creativity. And that's been since I was a little kid. Like I remember being 3 or 4 years old and memorizing the books that my mom would read to me. Before I could read, I would go back and pick up the books and I had them memorized because I wanted to read.
Wow.
And I would hold the book and recite it, pretending that I was actually understanding what the words on the page were.
Yeah.
Through all my incarnations in this lifetime, I've always been a writer and I've always focused on that. And now I'm in a place where I don't work with people to help them with their own writing, but I'm using the medium of language and more when I was storytelling and mythology to mentor people. So it's really exciting.
How does that work?
I host live events here on the Big Island where I tell stories. And I also work with people online in a program I developed called the Coracle.
Okay.
And Coracle is an old Irish word. It's Cura in Ireland, and it means a skin boat.
What's a skin boat?
They had boat in Ireland. I mean, people still make these today. And I think these boats are made around the world, actually, but in cultures that live closer to nature.
Yeah.
They've often been skin boats, but they were made out of seal skin. That's what the hull of these boats were made out of.
Sure.
And I just think that metaphor is so incredible when you think about our bodies being encased in skin. The goal of life is to be buoyant, is to float no matter what currents carry us. This is the metaphor for me to like create this container of working with people through myth and story in a ceremonial way to grow and evolve and change for the better.
So it's a 4 or 5 week course online, a mentorship.
The whole Coracle is a 3-month journey.
Okay.
But I decided to divide it into smaller components. Because I know that 3 months, that's a lot of time.
Yes.
Actually, I live in Hawaii. I've been here 5 years this time, and I have a relationship to the Big Island going back to 1994. I have been developing as respectfully as I can a relationship with Hawaiian culture for a long time, almost 30 years.
Yes.
And the structure of the Coracle is founded on the 3 Hawaiian energy centers. There's the feminine, which is Unihipili, the masculine, which is Uhane, and the Amakua, which is the spirit, the androgynous spirit world. So that's why there's the three parts.
What happens during the Coracle?
I love these questions like this because it really gives me an opportunity to describe what I do, which doesn't always translate. It's a little bit hard to describe sometimes. What happens is there's a lot that happens before everybody shows up. And that's what I would call like the call of the soul, like hearing the
Hmm.
invitation. And then for me, like I'm working ceremonially before I even promote anything. I
Yeah.
work with altars. I'm an animist, so I'm creating a physical space to funnel and channel the energy of what I'm offering into the space, making offers and prayers before I do anything. But then once people answer the call and show up, what happens is I'm telling a story. The first journey is called the journey of safety and belonging, and that is the journey of
Wow.
the internal feminine, which is where this inner safety resides within us. And when we have the true inner safety, that's when we are led into real belonging.
Mm.
So many of us in today's world don't have in modern life because our roots
Yes.
of the land have been so severed. What I do with the story is I find the story, the first story. And I mean it was so easy once I saw it to reveal to the listener where their core wound around inner safety is through the image
Mm.
that they respond to in the story.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really fascinating. I'm getting goosebumps just
Oh,
thinking
I love
about it.
that. Love that.
And you tell the stories and observe how your mentees respond. And then what?
Well, I ask everyone to share either with me if we're with a group that I always give people the option to share privately because people don't
Yes.
always want to be exposed in a group.
Yeah.
When we work with the image, there's so many ways that this can go. But the idea is like once we've got that image, that moment in this ancient story that's been gifted to us by our ancestors. These fairy tales are so old. They're still coming from a time when there were intact indigenous cultures. That's what these stories are coming from, the ones that I'm
Mm.
working with, at least. So they have this initiation, these qualities of how to go through these rites of passage into the underworld, which is what's
Mm.
necessary in order to find that unshakable sense of safety I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So once we have that image, we go from there. There's an aspect of just contemplation. That's one of the things like in the gene keys they really talk about. Just
Mm.
contemplation, letting that image move through you in contemplation. And then there's more active things you can do, which is like journaling. Encourage people to make art, really like view this image as information from not just your soul, but the world soul, the earth soul, the soul of the stars, going all the way back to like the very beginning of creation,
Mm.
whatever that was, wherever that was.
Yes.
And then we move the energy through the next story. So it's processes of refinement.
Mm.
What I do is as people go into the wound, when they hear the next story, I'm giving them an experience of the healing that they need based on the wound that I hear. Does that make
Wow.
sense?
Theoretically, yes. For me, I guess unless I experience it, it's really difficult to grasp because it's something new to me. Even though you're
Yeah.
drawing from ancient.
Yeah, I was really fortunate. Everything that I'm sharing, this has been like my process. That's why for me, it feels really authentic. I've been working on really, like for my whole life, especially with stories, but actively for 20 years, I was really blessed to be part of a community of storytellers, of people that were working in what in America is called the Mythopoetic tradition. These people came to this tiny, small island that I lived in. And then I would go to this conference in Maine that was like the Romany gathering of tribes every year. And
Yes.
to be in this lineage of really great American storytellers like Robert Bly and Joan Timpanelli, Martin Shaw, these were the people. Like I met Martin Shaw the first time he came to America.
Wow.
And then he came to my island over and over again. And all these other people were coming. And I was going through this process of initiation that I did not receive through my culture, through hearing the stories as a listener and then watching as they filtered out. I've never seen this fail. what happens is like when you hear a story like this that's properly told as a ceremony, or even not, that's how powerful they are. The outer circumstances of your life are going to reflect the story. And then, by bringing you through your situations and circumstances and the events of your daily life, it's not mental. This is a
Mm,
somatic that's outside of us. And that's when you realize the stories are really coming from nature. I know a lot of people now are familiar with plant medicine like ayahuasca
mm,
or psilocybin. If you listen to the Shipibo, these cultures that offer the medicine, if you ask them how they learned about the medicine or the songs, the Icaros they sing, they're going to tell you they got the songs from the plant.
yes.
And that's what these stories are. I just found out recently, this is a tangent, but I think it's amazing to show how this is in all cultures. I've been getting acupuncture. Maybe you know this. And I was really responding well to moxa. The acupuncturist and I were talking about it, and he loved to tell stories during our session.
Yes. Yes.
He told me that the meridians and the points were all received from the moxa originally.
Mm,
The ancients said it's like we received this information as a download from the plant. And then I said, "What is moxa?" And he told me it was mugwort, which
yes.
I was blown away because I didn't know that. And for the first time ever, I had found mugwort growing next to this
Mm,
bath. I was like in this outdoor bath on my friend's house, and I was like picking it. I'm like, "That's mugwort." Wow. So I've been feeling really connected to that
mm,
plant. For example, I've been telling this story recently called the Red Bead Woman. And there's a plant in that story that becomes a girl, a daughter. She's
mm.
born out of a plant called the mare's tail plant, and that's the plant horsetail,
I
which
see.
people know. And then the whole story unfolds from this plant.
Wow. Yeah, I'm a big fan of moxa or moxibustion. Basically, it's dried up mugwort and then rolled up, and you can hover or move it near the body or near the acupoint, and it helps with stimulation and moving the energy and the blood. So fresh blood comes into the area. And because the heat is very similar to body heat, it can penetrate deeper than, say, infrared light. Yeah, I would take moxa any day compared to acupuncture.
Well,
I mean, I do both with, myself.
the guy that I worked with, he was so tuned in and sensitive that he actually could tell the needles weren't really right for me. And he left the island.
Sometimes moxibustion is more nourishing, whereas the needles, it can kind of release more energy. And if you need more nourishment, then moxa is great.
Yeah. He's like, tell your next practitioner that you're good with moxibustion and acupressure and light needles.
Then go for the Japanese method.
What's that? Is that like a different kind of acupuncture?
For my Japanese teacher, Kiko Matsumoto, her style is super light and she doesn't, so she would feel around your body or points. And if there are pain points, she avoids those and she find other points because her theory is you're already in pain, so why make you suffer more?
I love that.
Whereas, yeah, Chinese teachers I've had, and they're amazing. They get results. A lot of them tend to believe you fight fire with fire. So they say if it hurts, it means there's a blockage. So we need to clear that blockage. Personally, I like receiving the Japanese method.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really interesting. I'm a body worker as well, but that's one of the things that I would really like to shift as a body worker with people. And this actually relates to the topic of love. I have so many people that show up on the table and they literally use the words beat me up. That means they want like deep pressure. They don't want me to punch them, but they're like, I want the deepest pressure you can be. I want it to hurt because they think
What?
that's what will heal them if they're in pain or if their muscles are tight. And I
Mm.
know that that's not true
So
because
they want deep tissue massage that's more for sports.
but that's not even necessary. So deep tissue isn't the same as deep pressure. And that's the thing
Okay.
that people don't understand, because you can still get deep. If I just put my hand on someone
Mm,
and really tune into the fascia and Lomi Lomi, which is the Hawaiian massage, I'm a Lomi practitioner. That's the energy, the focus of the therapist is on the bones. I'm focusing deeply no matter what. If I take some time even to sink in, I'm going to get like really deep, even on a physical level. But it's going to be
yes.
more gentle and loving. I'm not going to be creating pain in the client.
Mm,
Or it's same like you were talking about with the Japanese acupuncture. I might work on a place where there isn't pain to
yes.
address an area where there is pain. But
Yes.
there's a belief in, Western culture that it's like the no pain, no gain thing, even in
Mm,
regards to the way we treat our own bodies, which for me is like a measure of self-love.
yeah. I remember getting a massage from someone, and sometimes when I'm on the table, it's a little weird because the power dynamic shifts. It was hard for me to ask what I wanted, just laying down and the other person standing and looking at me. I requested the person to provide something deeper. And she used her elbow. It hurts, and that's not what I meant. Whereas when I went for a session with you, it was a complete different experience. You addressed my struggles physically, mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually. I remember we worked on ancestral clearing as well. I was like, what?
Yeah, I mean, that word deep, at the beginning, I said I was multidimensional, right? So the deepness can be on all those levels. And when I have somebody like you show up in my room on my massage table, for me, I'm like, because this person is open to receiving all of those levels.
Mm,
As a practitioner, that's like what you want. I mean, it's so amazing. And I'm also happy to serve anybody who shows up. But for me, it's
sure.
disturbing when somebody's saying, beat me up. It's not just that it's physically draining to give a massage like that. It makes me sad that that's how people are regarding like their own bodies. Massage therapists are trained like, deep tissue means like the elbow, like really hard. And like,
Yeah.
I mean, I do use my elbows for the people that need it, but even then, I'm still doing my best to like sink in, to like let it happen slowly. I had a colleague who I really admired in couples massages. If somebody came in for a 60-minute couples massage and they asked for deep tissue, he would say no. He's like, we can't
Okay.
do a deep tissue. We can't do what you want in 60 minutes. He's like, it requires more time. I really admire that because I've been conditioned more to please and to
Yeah.
like do what people want. It's especially in like a capitalist situation where there's a financial exchange. But I'm moving out of that more and more and realizing what I'm going to give is it's going to be good. But what we get in any exchange with people is really what we're asking for. It may not be like what we think we're asking for, but it is, because we're magnetic and we come
Yes.
together in these ways where there's things happening below the surface a lot of the time.
Well, I want to ask you, how do you define non-romantic love, as well as tell us more about your aquatic work?
Okay, I gotta pause for a moment and to think non-romantic love.
I
For
think
me, yeah,
we're so confused about romantic love.
yeah.
Plus, there's novels, movies, pop songs about it. I don't think I need to add more to that. I am curious about self-care, self-compassion, and then how to express more love to the world.
There's the aspect of me where it really is about accepting every experience as not just necessary, but a gift
Mm,
of being a human. So everything, like even those things that are difficult, even grieving, like losing someone that we love, or being angry, of understanding these are part of the process of
yes,
leading to like through aloha ma, which is a Hawaiian term that means self-reflective love. When you get to that point of true aloha ma, for me, that's like an aspirational goal. You experience every emotion,
mm,
everything. Love for me isn't an emotion. it's the culmination of experiencing everything that I could experience on the emotional journey of being a human.
And accepting it.
Yes, yes. For me, love is really about completion.
Mm.
On a practical level, that looks like doing my best to view the world through that lens at all times, and specifically to really begin with myself.
Mm.
Because I'm the one that I have the agency over. It's beginning with myself. You mentioned a little bit that I work with ferns. So there's a fern medicine that's from the Mu Hawaiians. And these were the people that lived in the Hawaiian Islands before the Polynesians came. I think the migration started around the year 500 of the Common Era. And they had a plant medicine called Puai Ehu Ehu, which is a plant medicine of ferns. And there are 103 of them known right now. There could be more we don't know of.
In Hawaii, that's endemic, or
Hawaii,
around the
in
world?
Hawaii,
Wow.
in the islands here. And they each have an emotional quality ascribed to them. And they are the teachers. So on a practical level, you can take this plant, like you could find it in nature, you could summon it, or you could buy a hydrosol from my mentor Keone, who has a company called Pohala Hawaiian Botanicals, and work with this medicine as a physical avatar of each aspect of the ferns. But the one I wanted to mention here is the fern called Laukahiho.
Yes.
Which is the fern of compassion. And for me, compassion really is the gateway to love, to move through all of these experiences that are often challenging that we're talking about.
Mm.
I just talked about a friend last night, reminding her compassion, it begins with the self. This is the way I was taught by Keone in his translation. And he's really liberal with encouraging us all to develop our own relationship with these plants as well. But I do feel that passion. I actually had an early teacher on my spiritual journey when I was about 32 tell me this when we were talking about forgiveness. And she said, you do have to go through life practicing forgiveness. The deepest level of forgiveness, we'll go back to that word deep, is to forgive yourself, to forgive your own soul for choosing this experience.
Why is self-compassion more challenging than expressing compassion to other people?
Yeah, that's amazing question. The obvious answer that comes up for me is that I can't speak for other cultures, but as a a white American raised in Christianity, fortunately a really mild version of the Protestant church, but still there's the legacy in American culture in general to be selfless. And I think as also a gendered female.
Yes.
To be selfless, or conditioned to think there's something wrong with the self, to focus on the self as selfish. And I do believe that there are selfish acts in the world, and I've been incredibly selfish at times in my life.
Yes.
And I now have compassion for myself. There's still areas where I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I didn't show up for that person when they needed me. And then I'm also able to tap into how wounded I was. Fortunately for me, I'm able to tap into that. I mean, maybe there's parts where I was just being a selfish monster. I haven't encountered those parts yet, but I'm able to have compassion for that wounded person at 27 years old that couldn't show up that I should have for people.
Yes.
And I have compassion. I have compassion for myself. There's a lot of tenderness there.
That's so beautiful.
I know. I've been crying the last 2 days a lot when I say these things.
And how do you cultivate that compassion, forgive your past self, and hold that safe space and rebuild your relationship? Do you journal? Do you have a dialogue?
For now, a lot of that just happens for me in the moment, internally, because I'm so aware of those moments when they come that a lot of things just happen for me inside. In the beginning of this journey, there was a lot of more external practices because I needed to work harder. I had a counselor. She was a real medicine woman that I worked with for years. So doing shamanic work, like soul retrievals and past life work and reframing medicine, energy work with her for years. And then I also did like more traditional therapy, Comey method therapy, and internal family systems. Definitely, I'm a writer, and my book, all of my poetry and my memoir I published a couple of years ago have really been acts where I developed compassion for myself, and especially the memoir, because it really is a chronicle of my struggle in life, the deep wounds that were inflicted on me by the world. What I want to pull out of this is that writing the book and then publishing the book, exposing myself, that was like a practice. Because feeling like, oh, are people going to accept this? Are they going to judge me? Especially like when you've been through an experience of being a classical victim, which I was. It's really, there's so many levels of shame involved.
Yes.
Are people going to understand, like, why did I stay in this situation, or how did I end up there? And for me to understand how I ended up in these situations and why I stayed in them required like such deep, deep contemplation and compassion for myself to understand the journey that led to that, and then exposing that. It was a huge, huge breakthrough in my life to publish that book.
I remember taking that book to Mexico when I went on a liveaboard scuba diving trip to Socorro Islands. So we're just living on the boat, basically eating, sleeping, scuba diving. And when we're not diving, I was reading your book. I was so moved by your courage to open up and share something that's so raw. Sometimes I would cry and other people are like, why are you crying? We're swimming with manta rays and dolphins. For me, I just felt really touched. And at the end of the trip, instead of taking books with me, and I really treasure books, I just felt your book wanted to continue on a different journey. On the boat, there's a library of books, and I just tucked it in there and wondered how it'll continue its own adventure.
Aw, thanks, Audrey. That's really beautiful. When I hear a reflection like that, it really affirms for me that the book is alive. I think anybody that is a writer will understand, or creates anything, any kind of art, to know that your book moved through someone like that.
Yes.
And that you move through it by leaving it there. Like I said, I'm an animist, so to know that a book is alive.
And it'll continue transforming itself and other people. Anything exciting you're working on other than the projects you already mentioned? And I do want to hear about your work in the water, which is very different than my method.
Yeah. Well, I am working on a new book, but I haven't focused on it as much as I would like to, because I've been so focused on the launch of the Coracle and the live storytelling events I have. But I have a new book I'm working on it's another memoir about my initiatory journey on Block Island, which is this small island off the coast of Rhode Island in the US. It's not just there's no bridge. You got to take a boat for an hour, kind of island in the North Atlantic. So the ferries get canceled. There's like extreme weather. So I moved there when I was 24, but I've been going there since I was 5. At 24, instead of going into the real world after college, I moved there. I was really depressed. I was in a chronic depression that had been going on since I was like 17. From the time I was 24 till about like 40, an initiation by the land that I didn't know was happening.
What do you mean by initiation?
In intact indigenous cultures. And by that, I mean cultures that are governing themselves through instructions that they're receiving from the land around them.
Yes.
All of them have initiation rituals and ceremonies when young people come of age. And these ceremonies involve an underworld descent, where a young person has to go through, a descent into the underworld, which is a descent into the shadow, or into hell. A terrifying journey. So when they come out of the initiation, they are rebirthed with this knowledge that they've gone through like a conscious death. And then they're able, the idea is that this will give them information that will just kind of arise out of the ceremony about who they are as adults and prepare them to take their place in the community as the unique person that they're called on to be as an adult member of a community.
Yes.
And we don't have that in American culture. But what happened to me and what I see happening, trying to happen all over American culture, is the impulse of initiation is hardwired into the human experience, and it's going to find us no matter what.
Yes.
So in America, you can see it happening through even like drug addiction or alcoholism. There's so many people that are dragged down into the underworld's dragging everybody down, and has been for it's been accelerating, for the past, since like the 1980s, I would say. It's been accelerating. Because the culture is so lost. So these experience of getting dragged into the underworld, but without a context to understand what it is, people just get lost in the underworld. But I was never like a hardcore addict, but I definitely had a major problem with alcohol. It was like not a positive force in my life. Somehow, in the midst of all my craziness and depression is also an underworld journey. There's no accident that I started to experience like really serious depression at 17. These are the ages where I would have gone through a ceremony held by elders that would have been a contained underworld journey. It doesn't mean it wouldn't have been as terrifying or dangerous.
Yes.
I would have had people guiding me. Instead, I went into depression because, I was pulled down by depression. But I moved to this island, and over time, because I still didn't know what was happening, the land started to initiate me because I was so in nature, in such an isolated and quiet place. And my consciousness started to open up to the non-human world of stones and birds and deer. Deer were like a really strong medicine for me. And this happened for a long time. And then sort of at the very last couple of years of it, I met Martin Shaw and this community of storytellers at the Great Mother Conference. And I had a context for it. I understood what was happening at that point. And that's what really enabled me to move out of it and to find my place back to the village. And that actually took a long time. This is something Martin Shaw speaks of. He says the hardest point now is for people, the underworld journey is happening. Everyone's getting pulled down. The COVID pandemic is that's a collective journey into the underworld. But he's saying like what's the hardest part is coming back up from the underworld and finding your place in the village. Because the village, it doesn't even know that it exists. It doesn't know that you went on a journey, and there's no space for you, most of us. I fortunately created a space for myself. And the first step for that was actually the Aguahara, was the water work. That was the first place I created for myself, where I was able to translate the underworld gifts that I received, because you receive gifts on this journey, into something that I could offer actual humans in my community that they valued.
And how is Aguahara different than, say, Watsu or dolphin dance or what?
Yeah, I love these questions too, because I'm so into all the aquatic forms, because I'm so into the water, right?
Yes.
Aguahara,
And you do it outdoors a lot of the times, whereas I prefer a pool that's body temperature.
yeah. The first exposure I had, like all the things I get into, it's because I experienced it. My first exposure to water work was a form called Janzu, Janzu. I was living in Tulum on the Yucatan in Mexico, and Janzu was specifically developed in Guatemala. I think actually he might have been in India when he was living there, but he was a Guatemalan man, and it's developed in outdoor water, and it's pretty extreme. Like even though it was in Central America, the waters, it's definitely not body temperature water unless you're in hot, which there are some, but it's also really extreme. Like there are elements of like Latin culture in it, with like salsa dancing,
the movement,
a lot of motion, spinning. And I went through like the catharsis. It's the catharsis that you need in your life. It was more powerful than ayahuasca, which I did twice. And that was pretty powerful.
Yes,
So
bringing
I
out the
would
big guns.
start offering this to other people. And it was always in outdoor bodies of water. I was never in a pool. And then I brought it back to Block Island and started offering it there, where it was even more extreme, because this is like cold New England water. Fortunately, the people I was working with were used to that water, but I had like a lot of extreme experiences that I was going through and bringing people into. And then as I progressed, I would go back to Mexico every year, and I discovered the Aguahara community, which was it's softer practice than Janzu. You could do it anywhere. Many Aguahara people work in pools, and you get trained in pools, but they're also, especially on the Yucatan, there's plenty of bodies of water. So what these, natural bodies, lagunas and cenotes, but what these practices share, the two, Janzu and Aguahara, is that they're both, I always do this before we get in the water, especially if they've had Watsu or healing dance, dolphin dance. I said, this is about our relationship with the water in the moment right now. So it's not about using the water as a tool to heal, but it's very valuable without a doubt.
Yes.
But this is about being with the water, however it is right now. And that's the main shift in the focus. And I think what happens with that is there's an invitation for the whole being of the person to become like water, which I think that's the famous Bruce Lee phrase, right? Be like water. He's like, be like water.
Yes.
And I think the Tao Te Ching also says that. It's one of my favorite poems. So it's very different. And the session isn't going to be an hour, especially in a natural body of water. It's not even just the temperature. The nervous system can't tolerate the energy of an hour in a body of water like that, because to be in the ocean, in Hawaii, I give sessions in the ocean. Yeah, the ocean's going to tell you when it's over. So this doesn't really translate well into capitalism, because capitalism $150 for 60 minutes. But to me, it is like an amazing practice to offer people. And for me, I'm not offering sessions so much. If somebody comes and we start talking about it, I'm not promoting it anymore. But it does happen. The right person comes who I know understands what I'm offering, or is open to it with a few words, and then we'll do sessions. What I'm really interested in personally is being with other people in the water. And that's a great thing that Aguahara has really developed around the world, very much in Latin America and Europe as well. Alex, the founder of Aguahara, Alex Stern, German man who has been traveling the world for definitely 10 years, maybe longer. I think it's more like 15, creating a international community of Aguahara people. And there's a lot of these gatherings. When I did the training with Alex, on the last day, he asked everybody, what does Aguahara mean to you? And everybody has their definition. And he said, Aguahara for me means community.
Wow.
It's not always about giving a session. There'll be the aquatic jam, which I know you experience with. I remember, when I did a training with Alex, it was hilarious because it was in a place in Mexico, a little community that was owned by acro yogis. And there was an acro yoga retreat going on at the same time as Aguahara. Yes. Acro yoga is the total opposite of Aguahara. Acro yoga is like, do, 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 And Aguahara is like, this is in the thermal hot springs. We'd be having our communal meals together with the acro yogis. Talking the meals. Aguahara has just been like in this body temperature water for hours, holding space for each other and just learning to connect with another human being through the fluids in our own bodies, move like water, or to become as soft as possible. None of us were talking, but we didn't mind, because that's what water is. Because I could see how, like, some circumstances in my life, I'd be annoyed with the acro yogis if I was that relaxed. But the water people didn't mind. We were just like, there's the acro yogis, and we're just like, oh yeah. It was so special to like be with a community of people that are really tapped into the consciousness of water and embody. It's very rare in our modern life, which is so focused on really kind of like the fire culture of like go, 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 which is kind of like what to me, acro yoga seems like I've only done it once. And I was just like, eh. But it's like I'm scared.
Yeah, there's a lot of trust involved and hope the people don't drop you or you don't drop them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No, and like no, I'm not just saying acro yogas. I think they're
they're
amazing.
so fun.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm like that looks so fun.
Recently, I met someone. She owns a yoga studio in Brooklyn, and she invites her clients to go to Mexico for retreats. And one of the things they do usually on the last day is dancing with each other underwater. And she said sometimes, depending on what season they go, there will be seals swimming around them, just being playful. And at a certain point, people don't even notice the seals anymore. They're just so into listening and moving with each other in water. And that's so beautiful because I think we don't listen enough these days.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's so beautiful. That's what I'm talking about. There's a point you cross where the water is moving you. And what's really cool is like to move from giving sessions where usually the practitioners is an anchor. Their feet are on the bottom.
Yes.
When both people's feet are off, there's no anchor. When both people are moving, and I know you know what this feels like. That's when that space of really listening opens up. And that's what happens in your aquatic dance. One of the things that was really fun for me, especially on Block Island, because I work there, I've given sessions there. I wouldn't be surprised if like, nobody's ever given sessions like these, because I'd be working in breaking waves. There's some calm bodies of water there, but I work in breaking waves with people. Work isn't even the right word. I would
Okay.
actually my feet are off the ground a lot. I'm letting the waves lift me up. I'll be doing somersaults with the people, like moving them around and just really going to these like gravityless spaces or less gravity because that anchor's gone. And that's really, really amazing. Because then, and ultimately, that listening word is why I like working in natural bodies of water over a pool. Because in a pool there is a containment, which is very valuable, because sometimes that's really what people need, is to feel like completely safe and contained by the
Yes.
walls of the pool. It's really valuable. And
The energy of the water is a little softer. There's less surprise element.
for sure. And there's also the to feel held by like the mother energy, like to be go back to the womb, to have that containment, but to be in nature with waves, with currents, like all of those things, those guide my session. I know moves like any other practitioner, but the moves are going to be adapted to whatever's happening
Yes.
in the water, and that's, to me, it's so fun.
Yeah, and I've received the sessions in the pool and also in hot pond, as well as in the ocean. I specifically requested it when I went to Ibiza. And when I was there, the practitioner and I met by the beach and waited and we waited. She said we can't go in because there are so many jellyfish. And I said, well, what do? I have, 3 days left on the island? And she said, you go pray to the dragon. I'm like, what are you talking about? Then there's
Yeah.
an island. She said, depending on where you go in Ibiza, you look at this island and it looks like a dragon. So I went there during the day or at sunset without fail, and I was painting it, just really praying to the dragon. I really want to experience this. And finally, on the last day, the jellies were gone, and the practitioner called me and said, we have about 2 hours, so get here now. And we had a session. The water was cold. She asked me to put a shorty on. I don't think it was Watsu that she offered. During the movement and then afterwards, I just went limp and she dragged me from the water onto the beach. And I really felt like I died and came back, and I was crying so much. I've never had that kind of reaction in a pool. And I wonder if it was the ocean that brought it up as well.
I'm pretty sure, based on your description of getting dragged out of the water, that's Janzu. I don't know of any other modalities that do that. And that was the first thing I did. And I had the exact same reaction for about the first 10 sessions I received, that getting dragged out of the water is really like coming through the birth canal. I cried for days after some of these sessions. Fortunately, I was in Mexico and I wasn't working, because I would just go home to my apartment and get in my hammock, like the little cocoon, and cry and sleep for days. This is another really interesting thing that you brought up that I remember about these sessions in nature, specifically in the little bit colder water. The transformation often happens, the session is really after the water. So in the warm water, because I've noticed too, when I've been in the warm water, you get so relaxed. That's kind of the session, and you'll be relaxed afterwards. But the session, the colder water, more happens outside the water afterwards than in the water.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know that was going to happen. I remember I was just like,
I had no idea either.
you're getting pulled along.
Yeah, I was after.
You have to do it fast. I'll tell you, as a practitioner, because you're dragging a heavy human body up onto the shore, like, so you've got to kind of like hustle.
And she was tiny. Yeah.
The person, she probably was trained by Sol Naciente, who was my original teacher in Mexico. He's kind of the guy that's been like training people. Classical Janzu, which was founded by a man named Juan Patik, and Sol's trained only hundreds of people, probably thousands. He's been doing this for like 17 or 18 years. And he's really like underground. He's not like an internet guy. You kind of find him. You're in Mexico, you find him. That's what happened with me.
When I received that session, I just completed my training in Watsu in Valencia, and I received a session as well in the pool. I was moved, but I was not expecting what happened in Ibiza. And afterwards, on the beach, I'm laying there and just sobbing. And the practitioner sat there, and because it was Europe, she like took her top off and breasts were hanging out, and she was just sitting there, but she was completely with me, and I felt safe to let whatever emotion wanted to come out.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you had that. Being with the person, I would sit there. This is what I'm saying. It doesn't translate into capitalism. Honestly, like, I would do this on Block Island. I came back one summer from Mexico. So I've been doing all these interesting things, like being a seaweed forager and this, like, but I would always have some other job to like make sure I was paying my bills. One summer, I was like, I'm not doing anything else but Janzu on Block Island. A session that I was charging like $90 for would ask like
That's so little.
It would last for like 3 or 4 hours, because I would be there on the beach with somebody for like 4 hours. And it was like the greatest honor of my life. I had like the best summer of my life. I didn't have a car. I was like riding my bike to my spot. It was so amazing. And somehow I made it work financially.
Yeah. Yeah, when you give, the universe does give back.
Another really beautiful thing about that Janzu, or just working in nature in general, but I think particularly Janzu, because of that dragging the person up onto the beach. Usually, pretty much always, I've never seen a person pop right up. Like, we're always just laying there, or it can be for a long time, crying or just silent. And then there's a moment where they first open their eyes. And many times I've heard people remark that that first moment of opening their eyes was really like seeing the earth brand new. And really understanding the magnificence of the beauty of nature.
Yeah, I felt so connected.
Yeah, that's my goal in life, is to help people feel that level of connection. And it has to begin with myself, because I can't offer that to other people if I'm not feeling that. I do lose that myself. So I'm glad we're talking about this, because I'm really feeling it. I'm like, I can feel it like moving through me.
One more request, and this is my favorite part, is can you please leave a gift to me and the viewers, and that is by giving us a question we can contemplate on.
Okay, what will it take for you to become your own oracle?
That's so beautiful. Thank you. And where can people connect with you?
You can connect with me on my website, which is jenniferlighty.com. And I also publish weekly on Substack. It's called the Corpus Callosum Chronicles.
Okay.
It's at jenlighty.substack.com. And that's easily findable through my website as well, Jennifer Lighty.
Okay. And I'll put the link in the description as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Audrey.
Thank you. Aloha.